Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon video. So today's video is going to be a little bit different in which it's not really a deck profile, it's going to be kind of like a theory craft session, so to speak, because we're going to have lots of new cards come out in BT21 that's going to try to shake up the meta, and we do have some new mechanics that is also coming out in BT21. And with BT21 being the first set that's being released worldwide simultaneously, we don't have the Japanese data to rely on to be able to have, a solid base that we then can further iterate upon. So we are going to have to start theory crafting ourselves. Obviously, really good deck builders already do this, and they don't necessarily let the Japanese biases influence their decisions when it comes to the decks that they're playing, but results are results, and it's still hard to sometimes get away from wanting to see what's been doing well in other territories and kind of steal their tech and ideas. So I figured it would be really fun to kind of show you my personal process when it comes to theory crafting. This isn't going to be a 100% proven, tested, and ready deck. This is just an idea to be able to have a base or foundation to then take into playtesting, jot down notes on what the deck is doing good, what the deck is doing poorly at, its matchups and whatnot, and then use that data to then go back into the deck building idea phase and kind of iterate on those notes as far as how well the deck was performing overall. So I figured with BT21 coming out, there's no better way to start than the brand new deck that I'm personally excited for, and that's going to be Appmon's. So before we even get into selecting the cards, it's always good to go into a database to be able to see the pool of cards that we're actually going to want to work with, especially one that's going to be a little bit more limited at the start. We do know that Appmon is going to see some more support throughout 2025. How much support is to be determined, but it's nice that they at least are just giving us more of the Appmons to, have more possibilities with. Because Appmon has the potential to be relatively flexible on the different types of builds that we could do with it because of the core mechanics that it's working with. So Bandai does have some slides that I'm going to be pulling up. Feel free to read the slides at your leisure, but it's just them explaining how the new mechanics are going to be working. So the two big mechanics that are going to be in Appmon more specifically is going to be the App Fuse mechanic. So we already know that we could see that they could digivolve normally on top of normal Digimon, and they also can digivolve on top of other Appmon at Rainbow Evolution. So it doesn't matter where you're starting or what your colors are, it just kind of works. But if you're using normal Digimon, you do have to pay attention to the colors. And then obviously we have the App Fuse ability that lets us use any two of the listed cards. So if it has 4 cards listed, we get to choose any 2 of those cards to be able to use for that App Fusion, which again gives us a good amount of customization to be able to get the types of fuses that we want using the Digimon that we want, which I think is kind of neat. So feel free to read these slides at your leisure. Then we do have lots of rules on the link mechanic and how linking works. So essentially, you're just going to be paying the cost of the link card and then slotting it in sideways as seen here. Then as far as some base level understanding, when it's linked, we do get this ability because Appmons don't have a inheritable ability. All of their, in quotation marks, inheritables are basically coming from the link ability. Then when it comes to the DP gain, it is going to be permanent. So in this example, Navimon is actually going to be 3k DP with the raid ability linked from Gatchmon. So I think that's pretty cool, and obviously we do have a link limit, so most cards have a link limit of 1, and then if they have link plus 1, that means we could add an additional link. So there's obviously more rules when it comes to everything about linking. Hopefully these slides help you understand. Some of them past some very basics that I was able to pick up. So I have a base level of understanding, knowing how these mechanics kind of function to be able to try to effectively build the deck that we're actually trying to build. So this should be the last slide on just everything you need to know about linking. Again, pause the video, feel free to read these rules at your leisure because it is important to how this deck is actually going to function. So let's remove that and go back into the editor and actually start theory crafting with what we're going to be building. So because our pool is so limited, I'm going to first, before I read any of these cards, start off by throwing all of them into the database, or like into a deck builder. So that way I could have basically the pool of cards I'm going to be starting to narrow down from. So this will just take a quick second. Not just one thing to note, not all of these cards are actually going to make it into the final build. These are just all of the possibilities that we have to work with. Obviously, the decks with more possibilities are going to be more complex in terms of like figuring out and whittling down what you want and what you don't want. But if the deck had any pre-existing data, I probably would just go with any pre-existing data before you start like adding some of the new cards into the mix and really start to get an understanding of the deck. But that's more for iteration of something that already exists rather than creating something brand new. Right now, I have all of the apps in here, so I can start whittling it down because obviously 64 cards is more than 50, so this is not technically a legal deck at this given moment. We're going to start whittling down between the cards that we want to use and the cards that we don't want to use. When it comes to what we have access to, it's right now mostly just Haru and his evolution lines. The main boss monster of the deck is going to be Gaiamon. When it comes to what Gaiamon is doing, we first have to understand how we're actually supposed to be winning the game with this card. If this is going to be an OTK deck, if it's going to be a control deck, if it's going to be like more of a mid-range deck, just understanding how our win con is going to lay out can help us understand what our other play lines are going to be to get to that win con. So if Gaiamon's the big boss monster, what's he doing to try to help us win the game with? So Gaiamon is going to be a blocker, so that means he kind of just has defensive capabilities. He's got Link +1, so we could have 2 links onto him, which gives him, again, a little bit more of a power boost because we could have different abilities and we could customize the abilities that we want based on what we're linking with. Then he has a when digivolving and when attacking ability where we get to link one of our Appmons from our hand or this Digimon's digivolution source to one of our Digimon without paying the cost. So when we go up into him, we get a free extra link, which is really good. And when we attack, we also get a link. It's not once per turn, so that's important to note if we're able to multi-attack, which we potentially can because of his Your Turns ability, where once per turn, when this Digimon gets linked, we get to unsuspend him and burn the top card of the opponent's security. So that's the real damage dealing portion of the card, so that way we could use him offensively or defensively, where we're going to swing, we're going to link, we're going to unsuspend, burn the opponent's security, deal the damage check. So he's essentially doing 2 checks every single turn, if not a third, because we also get to potentially attack again, or depending on where the memory lies, use him as a blocker. And with at least 2 links, he's going to be minimum of 17k because the smallest links that we have are going to be plus 2k. So he's going to be basically a 17k minimum beat stick that's going to be able to block the opponent or going to be able to deal some extra damage and get some extra link effects. So this is already looking to be a really strong card, and we have to note that he does have an app fuse condition with Globemon and Charismon. So from here, we could decide to work backwards and go from our level 6 down to our level 3s, or we could go from our level 3s all the way up into the level 6. It really just depends on what you're actually looking to do, but let's just take the backwards approach so that way we could kind of understand how the deck wants to be put together based on the abilities and mechanics that the deck is playing around with. So if we're going backwards, the 2 level 5s that we want to use are going to be Globe and Charis. So we do have an additional level 5, but obviously this doesn't actually have any app fuse ability to it. So this is just going to be a card we'd use for the link. We could digivolve into it, but again, it's just going to be a less efficient card for the deck overall. And I think that the whole 3 Musketeer Appmon side of things, we probably are just going to want to ignore. They have okay linking abilities, but that's not necessarily what we're trying to do because that's going to dilute the deck from the cards that we actually want to make our cards more effective. but it is cool to note that we do have the capabilities to use these cards, so don't just completely write them off or throw them away, because we might end up using some of them depending on where the meta ends up. For this base example, I'm just going to be getting rid of the level 5 because we want to focus on Globe and Charis for Gaia. So as far as what these cards are doing, so Charismon has the app fuse with Sociamon and Gossipmon. So those are going to be two level 4 Digimon we're going to want to use. So that way we have the capability to app fuse into the Charismon. He is another blocker, so he's got some good defensive capabilities. He's got an on-play when Digivolve, where we get a link at Digimon that's level 4 or lower from our trash, or this Digimon's Digivolution source for free. So that's pretty decent. Being able to use the cards in our trash is never a bad thing, as we've seen with the slew of broken purple decks that we've had in the past. So this is definitely going to be one of the more important cards just from the onset of that ability. Then on top of that, he has a Your Turns ability, where when this Digimon gets linked, we get to give one of the opponent's Digimon the ability to force them to attack until the end of their turn. So he's got a goading effect, which coincides with his blocker ability, which also coincides with Gaiamon's blocker ability. So you could kind of see where things are starting to line up, where we're going to force the opponent's Digimon to attack. And then obviously we want to have our Gaiamon, so that way we can, use Gaiamon to block and their Digimon is going to get deleted. Then he also has a link cost of 3 for Appmons. But even then, just the idea of how AppFuse works, we're essentially, the link cost is essentially the cost of digivolution. So, because the idea is we're going to have one Digimon on our field, we're going to link, and then we're going to fuse. So, for all intents and purposes, the link cost is the actual digivolution cost. Then when it comes to his linking ability, this is going to be the defensive backbone of the deck, because when this Digimon would leave the battle area, we get to trash one of its linked cards to prevent it from leaving. So that's pretty decent at being able to try to limit the opponent's capabilities on what they can do. This type of Digimon actually could be somewhat resilient against de-digivolve, because the linking is not an inheritable ability, so they can't necessarily de-digivolve us if we play our cards right. So you could kind of see where some of the strengths of Appmon are starting to come in, because of the extra added uninteractive elements that the opponent isn't able to do anything about, because they also can't attack our links as of right now. So that's just this card. So that means we're going to want to run the Gossipmon and Sociamon in some capacity. Then when it comes to Globemon, this is going to be the main offensive tool of the deck. It wants us to use DoGatchmon and Timemon. It's got security attack +1, when digivolving to, again, link with a level 4 that's underneath him or from our hand. Most of the time, we're probably just going to link with what's underneath him. And then we also get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with as much or less DP as this Digimon. So he's also going to be helping remove Digimon. Him naturally sitting at 10k is pretty beefy, because if we link with a level 3, then he's going to be a 12k. Link with a level 4, he's going to be 13k. Link with a level 5, and he's going to be 14k as a level 5, punching for 2 checks. Not terrible. Then again, he's got that same link cost. I think that's just the cost of level 5 linking in general. And then when linking, we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with as much DP as this Digimon. So for Gaiamon, it just means we could delete pretty much almost anything we want, which is pretty good. So he's going to be the main offensive tool, while Charismon's going to be the main defensive tool for how Gaiamon can work. So just from these cards already, it seems like we're going to want to have Globemon swing into the opponent, then app fuse into Gaiamon. So we're going to have Gaiamon be able to use the Charismon that we fuse underneath with, or we linked with, and that's going to allow us to unsuspend our Digimon and then get another check-in plus the burn. So we could already deal a pretty decent amount of damage just from the combination of these cards already, and that kind of is going to make up the majority of how we're going to want to approach building the rest of the deck to be able to support what these cards are doing. Obviously, they have cards that they're specifically saying they want to play, so Scopemon unfortunately does not make the cut because it's not any of the cards that we're going to be playing with. So obviously right now we're playing with a lot of level 4s, so we could probably start trimming them down. I doubt that we're actually going to try app fusing into Charismon, so we probably are going to reduce the amount of Gossip and Socia that we're going to be playing with. So going from here, I probably would want to keep Gossip at a slightly higher amount because this allows us to return cards from our trash to our hand, which, as we learned with any purple deck, interacting with our trash in any capacity is already very good. It's also a security Digimon, so again, pretty decent, because if it's checked out of the security, then he gets played for free. So we're probably going to run him at maybe like a 3 of, and then we're going to run Sociamon at like a 1 of, because we still want to see the card in case we want to app fuse in. Sociamon compared to Gossipmon, it's just not nearly as good. So it is the sticky debuff, but it is a very small amount, and most of the time it's just going to try to be used to make their Digimon smaller so we could block it, which we can come up, or we could just snipe a rookie, which is most likely the case use that this card is going to fall under. But I think it's personally worse than Gossip. If you want to run like a 2-2 split, fine. It's not the end of the world. This brings us at 12 level 4s, which I think is a good number for the curve that we're trying to establish. I think just because of the limited amount of tools, we are going to have a slightly heavier curve compared to a lot of other Digimon decks, but that's okay because of how, again, the linking mechanic works, where we're going to link from our hand. So again, we do have a Three Musketeers rookie that we're probably going to completely ignore. But before we get into the rookies, we are going to actually finish up the level 4s. These do not have app fuses, but that's okay because we could still just digivolve into them normally or link with them. But the main level 4s based on Globemon is going to be DoGatchmon Time. So these are going to be the ones that we're going to want to focus on a little bit heavier. Timemon wants us to work with Watchmon, Savemon, and Calendamon. So obviously we don't have Savemon just yet. We probably are eventually going to get them later. So we're going to have to focus on watching Calenda. While DoGatchmon is obviously going to be using Gatchmon and Navimon on top of Tweetmon. But again, we don't have Tweetmon. So we could still fuse using the Gatchmon and Navimon. So these are going to be fine left at 4 and 4. They're pretty good. Timemon being able to digivolve is incredibly strong. Then we have DoGatchmon, which obviously it has Rush and Raid, which are two very aggressive mechanics. Raid actually is more of a controlling mechanic, but the Rush is nice to have none the least, just to have extra ways at trying to deal some damage. Then he also has the ability where during your turn, once per turn, when it gets linked, this Digimon can attack. So that way we can play around with the fact that we could use this card to close out games with as just an instant rusher. 16 rookies, you could keep it that way. Then it just limits how much extra spots that we have in the deck. You could increase the level 4s and call it good. But I feel like we could do a little bit better by trying to trim down the fat, so to speak. So I think, like, obviously if DoGatchmon is going to be the main focus, because Gatchmon and Navimon are two of the stronger level 3s, those are going to be the ones that we're going to focus on. So Navimon gives piercing when he's linked with something, on top of the fact that this is going to be the deck's dedicated searching tool, looking for basically our Tamer and other Appmons. So that's pretty good already. And then Gatchmon is going to be the Tamer setter for the deck, which we haven't really had a whole lot of rookie Tamer setters. And if anyone's played Modern Digimon, making sure you could play your cards out for free, let alone the ones that are going to give you lots of advantage, is never a bad thing. So this is going to be pretty good, obviously, based on the your turn condition. It's going to be the one we want to have in our raising, so that way when we raise out our Digimon, we could link, get the card draw off of the egg, and then use his ability to play out the Tamer. I think that's pretty good. These are going to be the ones that we're probably going to be running 4 of, which means Calenda and Watch is what we're going to want to try to limit on, because we still want them for Timemon, but I think they're less important if we're just focusing on the main evolution line. So Watchmon has then on-play ability to stop the opponent from attacking with one of their Digimon. I think this is a pretty decent ability, but it's not something I would really want to focus on, because if the opponent doesn't have a Digimon on their field to interact with, then this effect basically does nothing. This is probably going to be the one I'm going to want to cut down first. So I probably would consider starting off with maybe a 2-2 split, see what you like, or depending on how many rookies you actually want, you could just run 4 Calendas, because Calenda at least is a security Digimon, so having more of it is to your overall benefit, because it could just come out of security and then boom, you have an extra Digimon to play around with. Then the ability that we get when it's linking is your opponent's security Digimon get minus 3k DP, so it allows our Globemon to potentially hit for some pretty high numbers as a level 5 Digimon. Then when it came to the egg, we really don't have any other option. It's going to have to be Swipemon, because we don't have any other eggs. And this is pretty good, because when we link, we get a draw card, essentially replacing what we just used. So that's pretty nice. And then Gatchmon is going to be playing out the Haru, so the Haru is going to be obviously important for how this deck works. It's going to be not only the memory setting tamer of the deck, but it also has this ability that interacts with when we're going to be linking, because when our Digimon gets linked, we get to suspend this tamer, draw a card, and then one of our Digimon can app fuse into a Digimon card from our hand. Basically gives us instant access at app fusing in case we have to pay for a link, the memory goes over onto the opponent's side. Then Haru really starts to shine, because then we could fuse into the higher stage right away and then potentially do more things. So Haru is just really good at being able to help fix some of the deck's weaker sore spots. You could think about running one less Haru and running a utility tamer if you really wanted to, but just to kind of keep things simple as a base or foundation to then start iterating upon after some playtesting, I think just keeping them at 4 is probably going to be super easy. Plus, the more Harus we have on the field means the more we could draw and we could fuse in this single turn. So it's not bad to be able to line up that chain of events if we have enough of them on the field. So I think playing them at 4 is probably still recommended as of right now, until we get some more testing in, or actual testing in, to see if there's any alterations that we need to make in that slot. Then the last card that we're going to have is probably going to be another 4 of staple, and that's going to be the App Link. So App Link allows us to basically have another searching tool. So this is going to be a really important card, because as of right now, the only other searching tool that we have is Navimon. So having more ability to search out our cards just makes the deck more consistent, which means it can help make the deck more fluid. And then it also has a delayed ability where at the end of our turn, obviously not this turn because we just played the app card, so we really just want to set this card up and then figure out when is the best time to use this at the end of whatever turn we're going to want to use this, where we then basically get to get a free link. So that's pretty powerful for this deck, because this deck is all about linking, and as you could see, linking generally costs stuff. So this is going to be really good. So we probably want to set up a rookie digivolve or app fuse and link into the level 4, then use this ability to link with the other level 5 to be able to try to get up into that instant level 6 as quickly and efficiently as we can. So this card's really fantastic at being able to help set that up, especially since it's a card that we could use in the early stages of the game to kind of just to choke the opponent and not give them a whole lot to interact with until we start moving out and doing our thing. So we could see that this is already a pretty solid base and foundation for the deck, and we're only at 46 cards. So if we really wanted to, we could flesh out the level 4s and the level 3s just to be able to hit that 50 card mark, but I think we could do a little bit better reaching outside of the app toolbox, because there's a lot of different things that we could do from this spot with the base and foundation that we already have laid out. So if we wanted to, we could think about running a supporting level 6. We could run a level 7 finisher. We could run some more options. We have a lot available to us. So I think just to kind of keep things on the simpler side, I'm not necessarily going to focus on running a supporting level 6 Digimon or a level 7 finisher, because unfortunately all of the things that we're going to be searching for are app-based and not color-based. So our searchers are going to whiff on those cards, cards, so we would just have to rely on drawing them naturally, which this deck, I don't know exactly how much exuberant card draw it's going to have, so I'm not necessarily going to elect to go onto that route. But if I had to choose a supporting level 6 Digimon, I would probably want something that could digivolve off of either of these Digimon. So that means we're going to want something that could digivolve off of a red and yellow and a black and purple. So I think like trying to focus a little bit on the Charismon is not necessarily the worst direction to go when it comes to the supporting level 6 because of the goad type of ability. It lets us be able to run some pretty decent aces. So if we look at Ace Digimon, just for an example, we do have a lot of good ones that we could potentially focus on. So let's narrow our search down to like level 6s and level 7s, because technically we could still use Gaiamon to be able to digivolve into. But I think like one of the better ones looking at all of these options that we have available is probably going to be Shadow Seraphi Ace, because it can digivolve off of either. It's a good blocker and it can de-digivolve the opponent. So I think plus on top of the fact that we do have raid and blocker into the deck means we could change targets of an attack. So we could trigger his ability ourselves. So if I were to run like a supporting level 6, I think like 2 copies of Shadow Seraphi Ace might be pretty spicy to catch the opponent off guard with. And then like if you wanted to run like a level 7 Digimon, we do have some pretty decent level 7s, but I think obviously because we're in red, we can play some Omnimons, and we have 2 really good Omnimons that we want to run. So we could run either Omnimon X Antibody, just as a good game finisher, or if you want to keep things a little bit more on the budget-friendly side and keep things a little bit easier, we do have BT5 Blitz Omni to use as well, just to try to end games with. So I don't necessarily think this deck needs a level 7, because then we're losing out on a lot, especially if we're unable to finish the opponent. And again, we can't search for the cards to be able to utilize them more effectively. But I would probably just try to figure out another searching tool for us to use, which we do have a whole bunch of memory boosts. So I think like running some of the 2-color memory boosts, because even though we are running a lot of different colors, we're running a lot of the same colors. So at least like as a base example, we have red in every single one of our stages. So we have a red level 4, red level 3, red level 5, red level 6. So it makes sense for us to want to search out red cards. So we could start thinking about, okay, so we're going to be searching out red cards. So we could run red memory boost, but then that doesn't hit all of the other cards. We could run Wisteria memory boost, but we're not playing any blue cards. So as of right now, based on what we have, I think that Garnet memory boost makes a lot of sense for us to consider using, because again, we have a red card in every stage, and we also have a black card in every stage. Even though we're not running a whole lot of the black rookie, because it's objectively the weakest rookie as of right now, in my perspective and opinion, on the early stages of what this card is doing and where the meta currently is, I think that it's still important that we can still search it out, on top of the fact that we do have, again, black level 4, black level 5. Because the funny thing is, even if you were to use like Omnimon X Antibody, Garnet can still hit Omnimon X Antibody. If you wanted to use the Shadow Seraphi Ace, Garnet can still hit Shadow Seraphi Ace. So like, it's not a terrible card for us to want to use and think about when it comes to deck building. So if you wanted to, you could kind of just stop the deck here, or you could start playing with some of the ratios a little bit. I think like maybe Shadow Seraphimon, because it's not an app, might be a little challenging, especially if this is the only way we're getting it outside of natural card draw. So maybe just running more memory boosts might just be for the deck's overall benefit. Or like I said, maybe a level 7 finisher. Who knows? It really is just up to you and whatever you feel like you want to start with before you go into testing and then figuring out what's working, what's not working, and iterating it from there. So I think this is a pretty good base or foundation, and like this is the part where as a content creator, I probably would then take this, start playtesting it, and then getting some feedback from the playtesting after writing down some notes on its initial results on certain like just flow and functionality is like the first thing I look at, and then the second thing I look at is like matchups, where it's like, okay, this struggles with this matchup. Is that just a thing I could solve, or do I just have to deal with that? Those types of notes are important because that's how I'm going to further iterate it on, and then however many iteration passes I want to do on the deck is eventually what would lead to me doing a proper deck profile on it. But I do think that this is a good starting or foundation point on just kind of like going through how I initially start building a deck and kind of going through the steps on identifying its win condition, what it's trying to do to get to its win condition, what are all of its support cards doing, and how can I better support the deck with what tools I have available both in archetype and out of archetype. So that's going to be all I really have for this video. I know this is a little bit on the longer one, but that's because it's kind of just the beginning breakdown of my initial process on how I go about building decks, and I think this is going to be pretty good and important information, especially as we hit unification and don't really have all of that Japanese data to look at to already start forming our opinions off of. So feel free to tell me your thoughts about not only the deck but the process down in the comments below. And if you like this type of content, don't forget to leave that like and subscribe so I can actually see and tell that you're enjoying this type of content. And if you are subscribed, make sure to hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date whenever I go live or upload next. And with that, I hope to see everyone in the next video.